Should I begin now?
Yes, I'll turn on this camera so it's rolling, and then you can begin when you feel ready.
My name is Styrbjörn Bergelt, and I play silverbasharpa, the older type of nyckelharpa. This one, based on an earlier silverbasharpa, was built in 1976 by Lars Boman from Södertälje for Anders Eklund. Then, when Anders, who was a student of mine, moved to a Bolin harpa, I acquired this one from him.
Harpan som han lät bygga då, 76.
I played tunes after Joel Jansson, and 1976 we made a LP recording with Joel. So I had the great fortune to meet and play with him numerous times. Anders Eklund and I often played these tunes for dancers. So I'll start with some of Joel Jansson tunes. First, the Bridal March.
Brudmarsch.
These tunes are polskor, so-called bondpolskor. Let's see, what shall I play? This is a polska after Styrbjörn, also called Tierpspolskan.
And then he had one called
polska efter lillpingan.
That was typical for Joel. He would always do this at the end of the tune. I'll continue with Joel, another bridal march, which is fairly well known after Gula Målarviten. Joel had his own take on the tune, a little different. And then I'll play a schottis. Would the lady like to buy the onion for a crown? then, I don't play just Joel Jansson tunes. In the 70s we were a part of a dance group
Där i mitten på 70-talet
and they had danced their way through the whole traditional Green Book and wanted to dance polskas. We were two groups of musicians there, a duo comprised of an Eastern Swede and a fellow who played mostly Västerdal tunes, and Anders Eklund and me, and we played tunes from Uppland
and Sörmland.
We played together a great deal of lots of slängpolskor. We played tunes that I have picked up, not those big busskalle tunes so much, not storpolskorna. Oh, we played byggnad maybe sometimes, but mostly we played lots of these little smaller tunes, which had 8-measure reprises. I can play some of those now. That was a busskalle slängpolska that Jonas Skoglund played. It is written up in a book called Nyckelharpa Playing at Skansen. Skansen is a large outdoor living historical museum in the middle of Stockholm. We found a bunch of tunes in that book, notes which we learned to play from, and I guess we put our own stamp on those tunes, play them our own way. It's not such a fast slängpolska, it's more an older elegant type, perhaps. It's possible to dance slängpolska in all sorts of different tempos. It isn't written anywhere that slängpolska has to have a particular tempo. It can be elegant and measured, but it can also have a quicker driving tempo. I take another one of those. Vyskalle is credited with having said, "You can't be tired when you play that tune." Perhaps not. You should probably not be tired when playing any of his tunes. We also played tunes after Otto Larsson, an old nyckelharpspelman who lived in Uppsala at that time. We had a lot of tape cassettes of him playing. Otto had a lot of nyckelharpas and his own special playing style.
His polskas had a
Hambo feel to them. Hambo.
I think
He called that one Grane Hambo. Anders Eklund knew the names of all the tunes. He learned them all. He had all those cassettes and listened to them all the time in his car. Now and then his car was broken into and the radio tape player was stolen along with Otto Larsson tapes. I guess those thieves didn't understand the value of the tapes, so they disappeared. Luckily, Anders had made copies, so they still exist somewhere. There was an amazing amount of tunes. I just play some of them. I play a nice little waltz, which was on the tapes. That was two tunes after Otto Larsson. He had a really nice sound in many of his harpas. Those that he plays on the tape have a very silvery and delicate sound. there are those who really love his sound. Joel Jansson, on the other hand, played in a much more robust manner. He really dug into those strings so they smoked and sputtered and splinters flew all around, just about. But that was a very effective playing style when playing for dancers. For the nyckelharpa isn't a very strong instrument, so it's often better with two players. But if you do play alone, then you just have to pour it on like he did. I guess he figured this out playing at all those farmers' dances.
He was really a
Dance fiddler
and didn't
cultivate any particular finesses. What mattered most to Joel Jansson was the beat. I can hear the neighbor has begun to play the piano.
I can hear it too. I was wondering what it was. We'll just have to ignore it. What was that?
One more drink shall we have tonight. It was a polska after spelman from Hälsingland, From Olle. He played fiddle. This Jonas Skoglund had learned the tunes from him. Jonas had lived in Hälsingland as a small boy and then moved around age 4 to Tierp in Uppland. Born in Järvsö, 1846, and played nyckelharpa. He's so nice, so nice. Amazing that he can sit there and listen to this.
Det är nog rätt mycket not.
Much of my repertoire I have dug out from notes.
På noter.
But I wouldn't be able to play these tunes if I hadn't heard other spelmen play similar tunes, or if I hadn't played so much for dancers. Because if you just take the notes straight off the page, well, it's almost impossible to get the proper styling. I don't think it's possible, really. You have to know that this is a bondpolska, or this is a slängpolska, and therefore must be played in such and such a way. I mean, the notes are really useless unless you know this already. Sure, you can always just play the notes.
But rhythmically.
It won't be right. Okay, then I'll play. The first one. There were two spelman who played at Skansen, and that book is called Nyckelharpa Playing at Skansen. And the fellow who put it together was Leffler. He wrote about those two spelmen who were employed as craftsmen there. It was the end of the 1800s, 1880s, maybe 90s. So they were employed as craftsmen, and in the evenings they wandered around Skansen playing nyckelharpa. It would be great if they would take up this practice again at Skansen, employing spelmen. It was a nice touch, added a great deal. One's name was Johan Edlund, and he played tunes after a spelman named Marsetran, played nyckelharpa, clarinet and fiddle. This tune is known by other names. It's also called Smultronhjärts-Idas polska, but this is a version of the Marsetran.
Interesting way I see now. Different from how I hold my bow.
Right, it has changed a bit over time. Anders had this bow, and when he had it, there was a small piece of wood here, which you could curl your little finger around. That was fairly common. I removed that and now hold it like this. I studied photographs of how older players held their bows, so I hold it like this, but it's an older grip. And you tighten the hair with the thumb like this and regulate how many strings the bow makes contact with.
But you don't seem to have a frog with one of those screws.
Absolutely not. No, everything is totally loose, and the tension is regulated by the thumb.
Let me come closer so the camera can see. Hold still, like that. Then pivot the hand slowly so I can follow. Great. Okay.
Some held like this, 2 fingers in the front and 2 in the back, and the thumb here. And some like this, with just the little finger in the back.
Where was that thing you mentioned for the little finger?
It was here. A little plate was attached here with a little, and you could hook the little finger into it.
Aha, okay.
Like that, and hold it in back there.
Okay.
Det får komma att en del spelman. För det mesta ser det ut så.
Some spelman held it like this.
And squeezed the hair
toward the stick with the thumb. That's what they do in Styrbjörn, the older players. But this is another way. This is how Joel Jansson held the bow, and that's where I learned it.
Det var någonting.
This was something I also saw and read about in Jan Lings book Nyckelharpa, which also was a doctor's dissertation.
Doktorsavhandling.
It came out about the same time I got my first nyckelharpa, so that book became almost like a Bible. You could look up everything in it, how different spelmen tune their resonance strings, found out that there were different ways to approach the tuning. This opened the door to experimentation and even different ways of holding the bow. He had examples of everything.
Did you meet Jan Ling at that time?
No, not at that time. I had met him earlier when he served as an assistant at the Music Museum in Stockholm. I came in and asked for something, and he showed me. Here are our archives with lots of tunes. You're welcome to sit here and copy down tunes if you want. So I copied a couple of tunes and then left. This was probably before he came out with that book. He was maybe doing research for it in that museum. I don't know where he was when the book finally came out. I think he had moved from Stockholm by then. And there was no particular reason to contact him because everything could be found in the book, I thought. I was pretty direct and forward by nature and had no difficulty pursuing information when I wanted. For example, I wanted to contact someone in Landsmans archive in Uppsala because they had a lot of old wax recordings. So I called and was connected to a sound technician there, and I asked him a lot of questions about recordings of spilopipa and nyckelharpa. So he made copies for me onto tape cassettes, which were common back then. This was 69, 70 or so.
69, 70 sådär.
He even prefaced each recording himself, identifying who was playing and what it was and so forth. At that time, my primary interest was spilopipa.
Spilopipan, som jag höll på med mycket.
But these experiences and exposure to Jan Ling's books confirmed that one can research and find answers in the realm of folk music.
Läs Jan Lings böcker.
Ling had also come out with a paperback, Svensk folkmusik, in the late 1960s.
I'm not familiar with that book.
I don't have it here, but I read about all these instruments and so forth in that book.
Ja. Men...
So I was trying all these things and playing all the time, using lots of heavy drone like this. This style of playing is something which I have left behind. The old-timers didn't really play like that. Although some spelmen played so heavily that all the strings were droning along all the time. Then when the silverbasharpa came along, the players tended to go lighter and just delicately dip down to the drones, sort of puffing on the loud notes. That's a polska of the Mats Wesslén. Some of those bondpolskas proved to be much better than others for the dancers. They felt that they came around better. There needs to be a certain amount of energy in the music so they get all the way around with the girl. She's up in the air for part of that turn. It's difficult. It's a fairly heavy dance. It's not as fast as a hambo, and that means that it requires a certain pushing energy on that second beat. The dancers have to feel that energy to help them get around. Some polskas were better than others in this regard. The one I just played was good, and Styrbjörn's too. We played those two a great deal because the dancers liked them so much. But of course we play other tunes as well.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about because I dance quite a bit myself.
You know what I'm talking about then?
Yes.
So I'm not just talking through my hat.
So many spielmen aren't dancers and they don't really understand. They maybe play beautifully, but they have very little understanding of how the music is used on the dance floor, what the music must do in order to move the dancers along.
Right, we had to really practice this. We worked at it for many years. This was during the 70s, when there was an open debate about practically everything. So the dancers were on our case constantly. That was way too slow, you can't play it that slow, we can't get around. Or the opposite, that's too fast. It's never been that fast. It was a terribly sensitive subject, and we musicians developed almost a complex about playing. Didn't know how they want a particular tunes played this time. We became uncertain. You can't help but become uncertain, rather than knowing that this is the right tempo. It was often, so how do you want it played this time? This was not entirely good, but we developed an experimental frame of mind, and eventually it became clear what the tempo of the tune should be. We have heard from the older players all along that the tunes can't be too slow for them the dancers can't get around, that they need a certain speed. That's something that those folks down in Stockholm have totally misunderstood. The fun thing was that the dance group wasn't made up of people from Stockholm, except for me and others, and maybe one or so more. They were mostly folk from outside, from Hälsingland and places, and they called themselves Nordingarna, Northerners, because they was from the north of Stockholm. They had danced Hambo and the Green Book, and their goal was to learn to dance real polskas.
Riktiga polskor, det var liksom målsättningen.
It was really fun, for we felt that we were discovering and making something new from the old.
Väldigt kul för att man gjorde något nytt tyckte man. Av det gamla kanske.
You were rediscovering.
We were discovering new things, yes.
Så. Ja.
We heard other spelmen play. And it was during that time we made that Joel Ransson record. Where was I? I played a bondpolska of the Mats Wesslén.
En bondpolska. Som spelades. Han var en...
He was trained as an organist who had played for Hafner in Uppsala. But he had grown up in the northern Uppland, and nyckelharpa was pretty much the only instrument to be found in those parts of Sweden. So he was interested in the nyckelharpa and learned to play. He even built nyckelharpas and made some changes and developed his instruments further.
Konstruktion.
Was that Wesslén?
Yes, Mats Wesslén, but there were even others. We hear of Sergeant Söderstedt and others, like Gullbergsson, involved in that. There are preserved Wesslén nyckelharpas. Mine is built after one of those. They tend to have a great number of chromatic keys. Wesslén was a student of Buskalle, a legendary and almost mythical spelman, and he wrote down Buskalle's tunes on paper. Some of them are referred to as polskor after Wesleyan, but it is probable that they are really buskalle tunes. That was an ordinary Wesleyan polska too.
Oh, it's a wonderful one.
Yes, it's
Absolutely wonderful.
extremely detailed. Lots of angles.
and pieces to weave through.
They were really great fun to play together with Anders. He had a great facility for learning tunes, still has. When you were playing these tunes on two nyckelharpas together, they could never be fully synchronized the whole time. The beat was synchronized, but not each of every note. So all sorts of little sub-rhythms developed, and well, it was pretty exciting. So the playing was never particularly perfect in any way between us.
Där spelar vi väl och sen spelar vi.
Then there was a tune they called Kalle Anka-låten, the Donald Duck tune, for it sounded like those Donald Duck films.
Kalle Anka-filmerna.
But I never liked it.
Ja, och sen var det...
And then there was a whole lot of tunes after Jonas Skoglund in that book.
Skolan spelar. Då...
There is one that I've been playing, a buskalle tune. He had learned it from an old guy who trallade the tune. So he didn't learn it from notes, rather from an old guy who sang the tune. That's a little simple tune. One can imagine singing it.
We play that one at home.
You play it?
Yes, on chromatic harpa.
It's a version after Peter Hedlund, then?
Yes, we've learned it from Peter.
Yes, right. And now he has it on his record. That's fine. It's not necessary that all tunes be so very technical. That's not what makes a good tune, that it has a lot of notes. It's other things, I think. It's possible to like one of those simpler polskas much more than one of those parade numbers. But then there is something very, very special about Erik Sahlström's own compositions. He developed, stretched the envelope, so to say. He must have heard other music, for it makes modulations, shifting from one key to another via transitional chord common to both. His Trollrike Polska, for example, is maybe not so terribly technical if you can play chromatic nyckelharpa, but his harmonics are full of musical year changes and sudden major chords in the middle of minor phrasings. His tunes are nothing short of precious pearls.
Can his tunes be played on a silverbasharpa?
Some of them, but not very successfully. No, not really. If you play silverbasharpa, you must really devote your efforts to an older repertoire of tunes. Another thing with the chromatic harpa is that you can play in a lower range of notes. And that makes a fuller, richer sound. With the silverbasharpa, you are way up in the treble range all the time. It sounds thinner, sparser. Ceylon Wallin, he played his tunes. He was way down low, so the sound was richer, mellower. By comparison, the silverbasharpa sounds perhaps a little shrill or tinny.
I think the sound of the silverbasharpa is exquisitely beautiful. More like sheer lace than sturdy fabric. Transparent in a way. Thinner.
Yes, it is.
But oh, so lovely.
And then, when you play a certain instrument for a long time, you adapt to its sound. Your ear gets used to it. You don't give much thought to what it is that makes it sound special or unique. It just sounds normal to your ears. If an outsider come along and hear your instrument, maybe he's used to a violin or something, he will go, wait, what is that?
Right.
That's how it is. I played wind instruments in the beginning, French horn among other things, but I had to stop for I banged up my teeth. I began playing a recorder around that time and trained as a teacher of the recorder. But not much came of it, and I went back to my previous job as a photographer. So music became a side interest, a very big side interest, folk music. And I came in contact then with this old Swedish wind instrument, the spilopipa.
Som är en folklig flöjt och som man kan kalla för.
Spilopipa was a part of the fäbod culture.
Flöjt om man säger så, var det man har haft den i fäboden.
And I learned to play tunes on it.
Can you tell us what a fäbod is?
It was where the animals were herded for summer pasture, summer grazing. This is a very old practice, sending the animals up into the forest where they could graze to their heart's content all summer and get fat. They built small simple houses up there, and women tended and milked the animals and processed the milk into cheese and mesost, whey cheese. Women handled everything at the fäbod. And the foodstuffs they produced was aged and stored over the winter. They had special songs to herd and call the cows, kölning, singing or calling in a very high register. And these herding songs are quite unique to Sweden. This herding culture had its own instruments too. They played the cow horn, wood trumpet and spilopipa, like this one. It's not known just how far back this pipe goes, but it's probably safe to say its origins reach back into the Middle Age sometime. They exist not just in Dalarna, but all over Sweden, where there were these fäbod camps. This is the best known.
Lars-Erik Andersson, Evertsberg, Älvdal
makes these. So I got hold of one and start playing. It come with a book of tunes. I play some of those.
Kan spela någon utav dem.
And then there was this tune which just about everyone learned on the spilopipa back then.
Lilla gubben upp på tallebacken.
That's an older type of fäbod music, which employs the musical scale of this instrument.
Som finns på den här pipan då.
Some tonal steps are a little too high and some are a little too low, if one wants to notice it. But this is something that spelmen who played this instrument left behind in the early 1900s.
De hade det här som instrument som de spelade.
One of those spelmen was Svets Anders, and I learned some tunes from the recordings that were made of his playing. Mjölnarpolskan, Miller's Polska was one he played. He pushed things up a minor third, so the tunes landed in a major key, which is what they did at the end of the 1800s. It was more fashionable to play tunes in major. Even older tunes were often transposed to major keys. This is all a little uncertain, but on this instrument anyway, that's what he did. I play a walking tune after him. That was the spilopipa.
Lite grann.
I played an awful lot of tunes on this instrument. I used to visit up in Hälsingland during the summers together with a girlfriend and always carried my spilopipa with me. I'd sit and play in different places, by streams and waterfalls and places like that. I'd find tunes, mostly old fiddle tunes, which fit nicely on it.
Äldre fiollåtar som går att spela på den här instrumentet.
It only has 1 octave range.
Sån här.
That was an old fiddle tune from
Gärna Finnmark.
I was in Orsa, Finnmark then, in Hälsingland. It crosses the border into Hälsingland. And I picked some of those old tunes that I felt might fit. The girl had an uncle who was from Älvdalen. And we made a visit to Lars-Erik Andersson and watched as he made pipes. And I bought one from him. I have 3 of these pipes now, but I don't play very much on them now. I used to play a tune after Hjort Anders, a very well-known Swedish fiddle.
Känd svensk fiolspelman och det.
It's a love song he learned from his mother, who used to sing it.
Mor som hade sjungit den. Och den.
It fits nicely on spilopipa. Spilo means to play in Älvdalen dialect, so spilopipa means playing pipe.
Spilopipa.
Love song after Hjort Anders.
Do you ever play spilopipa out in public for an audience?
Yes, occasionally. I played some spilopipa at funerals. It's a fitting sound in the church.
Den låter ju bra då när det ökar ibland så spelar det.
Other times I'm inspired to take it along different place and play.
Sådär.
Much more so when I was younger. But then eventually I began playing. I moved out to Hässelby outside Stockholm in the early 70s. I had then played nyckelharpa several years. And I joined the folk dance group, Vällingby Folkdansgilde, that performed now and then, and I played for them, sometimes on spilopipa.
Långdans från Sollerö.
probably noticed that I played that tune with heavy emphasis on the beats. That was necessary when there was a lot of dancers. It's not as easy for the dancers to hear the beat in a flute like this, so it was necessary to give a little extra push, extra emphasis, to be very clear about the beat, in other words. That tune was often part of the program when we had dance presentation for the public.
That tune, Long Dance from Sollerön, really is a long dance.
Yes, it's a real...
It's my understanding that that dance is one of the oldest documented dance forms in Scandinavia.
It's documented after seeing older persons dance a long time ago. The assumption that it's an authentic version is a reasonable one. The cat is into something.
What was his name? Felix?
Ja, Felix.
He probably just wants to be part of things.
Yes, he always wants to be part of a thing. All right, that was a little about the spilopipa.
I was wondering, maybe you said and I missed it, but what sort of wood is it made of?
Ja.
This spilopipa is made by Lars-Erik Andersson. It's made of spruce. He's that last person who makes these in the traditional manner as far as I know. Learned from his father and grandfather in Evertsberg, Älvdalen. He would be pretty old now in
2005. In any case, I have seen newly made flutes at the Music Museum in Stockholm. A recorder doesn't have as many holes. This one has 8 holes on the top. The number of holes increased over time to have more notes. There's no thumb hole like there is on a recorder. The keynote isn't at the very bottom. The dominant leading chord leads to the tonic. Like that. One can imagine that this flute had less holes to begin with, and that more holes have been added over time. It works just fine to play tunes with only 6 holes too.
Is it a totally Swedish instrument?
Yes, it's a Swedish instrument.
Svenskt instrument. En svensk flöjt helt enkelt.
Quite simply.
A Swedish shepherd's pipe.
Ja.
En herdeflöjt, men det är...
The shepherds were, of course, women.
Kvinnor.
It was the woman who played and used these flutes at the summer pastures and out in the woods. Played spilopipa, cow horn, and they sang too. Birgit Källström has researched and written about this instrument,
Spelpipan i Dalarna.
where she names a large number of spelmen during the 1800s who had this pipe as their main instrument. Often they also played fiddle.
So it was a main instrument for some.
For some, that's difficult to imagine today. Today it's the other way around, that the fiddle is the main instrument, but back then there were spelmen who only played spilopipa.
It looks as if something's written on the front.
Yes, it's the maker's name.
Lars-Erik Andersson,
Evertsberg.
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 For a number of years when I was younger, I thought that it was fun to work with and explore this instrument. I had just begun playing nyckelharpa at that time too. This pipe has its own rather special scale.
It does?
Yes, it does, because the pick-up note
Ought to be.
it's much lower. This is pure, and this is how it's in the flute. The third, it's a little high. to B minor. It's a little too high, minor third. It's a captivating instrument.
Have you ever made a record with this instrument?
No, not with just this instrument, but I made a record where it appears on several tracks. 2 records, rather.
Are they sold out? Is it possible to purchase them?
They were LP records. They are all gone. In fact, those records received a phonograph prize, the Swedish phonograph prize, respective years 1977 and 1980, which was a sort of fun. I think it was because I presented an unusual instrument and I wrote a fair amount about it. I was pretty ambitious in my presentation, and I guess they liked that.
But it might also be that it sounded so beautiful.
Maybe so, and that record was called
Tagelharpa och videflöjt, och
and this is
videflöjten.
it is referred to more often as säljflöjt or säljpipa. This is not a real one. This one is made of a plastic tube, which is how I first come in contact with the instrument.
I Norge.
The instrument has a much stronger tradition in Norway. They make them from plastic like this and even metal sometimes. This instrument should really be made from bark. I'll go and get one. I have a real one here.
Do you think of this plastic one as a cheater instrument?
You could say that it's a cheater instrument, but only if you are talking about the material it's made of. Other than that, I don't think it is a cheater instrument.
That's a wooden stick.
What you see is a long bark casing which has been pulled off the innards of the stick, the hollow pipe.
So how are we going to show that then? That will be tricky.
There you see an opening has been cut so it becomes like a whistle. You blow in there.
Wait, start over. You blow there. If I understand first how this works, there's a hole there, but there's no hole there.
No. This particular specimen has dried up. You can only make these pipes in the spring when the sap is flowing in the branches. Only then can you pull off the bark casing.
Can you hold it so it doesn't roll off? Like that.
Amazingly good camera.
Okej, så vi gör så.
Okay, will you point with your finger?
That's where you blow. This builds the tone, called labium in all languages.
Okay, then push it up slowly over the stool till we get to the other end.
Jag skjuter upp den så tills vi kommer till ändan där.
This opening is covered or opened and closed with the index finger, and that gives you different sounds.
All right, now we've done that.
This is a seasonal instrument which can only be made starting about the middle of May for a couple of weeks, a month at the most. And then you cut off a long stick like this, take a knife, knock on the twig and say
Picka, picka, pipa, lös, låta, löser du inte ska kasta det brinnande sjö, men löser ska du få fil om söndagsmorgon.
Then you cut all around here and then here. And then you grab it and twist to loosen the bark. If the sap has flowed enough, you say knicks, knicks. And then you can pull off this whole long hollow tube of bark. Then you are standing there with this naked twig and you cut it off and stuff it back into the hollow tube.
So it's totally empty at the bottom?
It's empty, a hollow tube.
Okay.
And now you can blow into it, so it sounds like this. Now that we have modern materials, spelmen have
taken to using other materials, metal and other things.
Plastic is the most common, for it's a little nicer to work with and not so heavy. The result is a flute you can use all the year long. I think the natural bark version is a little easier to play. The bark is slightly tapered and the plastic ones are cylindrical. What you get when you blow are these natural tones. And when you carve the hole,
och den där är kombination med
and you can play simple melodies.
Do you make the different tones with your tongue?
Yes, the tongue moves like this inside the mouth, up and down, low tones like this.
Ja, di, höga toner, di, da, do.
Aha, can you play some tunes on it?
Yes, I can play some tunes. That was a halling.
Norwegian?
No, that was a Swedish halling made by Anders Rosén, a spelman from up in Malung in Sweden. I used to play it for a group who enjoyed dancing halling. I played all sorts of even beat tunes that they could dance halling to. That was a Norwegian tune. Sometimes we just play improvised tunes. Improvising was fun and easy on this instrument. So that's what we did.
Och de dansar.
And everyone danced around, lots of fun.
Och sen har jag tidigare.
I made a fair number of these and sold to people.
Are there any other spelmen who make use of this instrument in their music, performance artists?
Yes.
Any I might have heard of?
For example, hedningarna come to mind. Anders Norrudde has played a lot. He has also developed the instrument a bit, made larger ones and deeper.
Did they learn to play from you?
They have gotten a certain inspiration from me. I was the first person here in Sweden to play this instrument. Around 1975 or so, I was contacted by Kristina Mattsson, who worked at some government folk music office, and she got me on the radio and had me talking about the instrument and playing for the listeners. After that I made a record. The person who had used it and played most is probably Ale Möller. He has played a lot of säljpipa. He is an amazingly gifted musician. Sometimes I listen to him and think, boy, that sounds good. It's that me playing. But then, of course, it's Ale Möller, not me. No, I'm joking. I think he's awfully good. I like to be able to play as well as he does. That's what I mean. Well, but I have been pretty good on the instrument myself too.
How did you first encounter the instrument?
I was visiting a girl I know who lived in one of those communes that were so popular at the time. Everyone lived together as a big family. And they had a dog, and the dog comes running with something in his teeth. What he got there? With some flute he picked up in Norway. So I looked at it. What on earth? I understand nothing. You can have it if you want. The dog had chewed it a bit, but I accepted it. Then I started blowing on that thing, but didn't understand how to get different tones out of it. So I experimented with partially covering the whole and so forth. I just kept at it, and then I heard this Norwegian spelman play it. Øyvind Groven was his name. He had an interest in the instrument and had even written about it.
Was there a tradition in Norway on this instrument?
Yes, he had a tradition from the area around his home. He was trained as a composer, in fact, and he played in a completely different way. He never partially covered the whole. That was a tune after Øyvind Groven, Kivlemøyene. That means the girls from Kivledalen. There is a story behind this tune. It's a very old Norwegian tune about 3 heathen girls who played their horns on a Sunday. This was in the Telemark area, and distracted folks who were supposed to be going to church distracted them with their beautiful playing. The parishioners just stood still as if transfixed and bewitched by the music as it echoed throughout the valley.
Och prästerna kom ut och lyste dem i band.
This angered the priest, and he cast a spell on the girls, a sign of the cross, and the unfortunate girls turned to stone on the spot. They are still standing there in form of raukar, stone formations.
This is a true story, isn't it?
Sounds like it might be.
I think so.
It's fascinating. It's a limited instrument, but within its limitation it has a great deal of expression within its own natural scale. He referred to it as a natural scale, a sort of overtones that are in signal horns. So he wrote about it and suggested that Norwegian folk music had been influenced by the sounds of this instrument.
Men det där finns det sen delade.
There are differing opinions about that. Perhaps he's right. These are just theories. There is much that has influenced folk music. It's instruments like this and others with different as well as similar scales and lots of other things. People have heard other sort of music, church music, sounds, all sorts of influences.
What tycker du?
Where do you yourself feel that you fit into the Swedish folk music scenario these past 30 years or so? You have a place. Styrbjörn Bergelt has a place.
En plats där man
det kan ju verka som att man inte har någon plats nästan.
It can feel almost as if one doesn't have any place at all. I've been fascinated by and occupied with going from one instrument to another. Those instruments that have lent themselves to a social role have come to have more meaning for me. For instance, with a nyckelharpa you can play together with someone, harmonize together and play for dancing. I was basically a lone spelman when I began with all this. Then, when I found the dance group in Vällingby so long ago, I think about that now and then. I discovered how much fun it could all be. They received me with open arms. They didn't ask if I could play particularly well. I was simply welcome. It was wonderful.
The music that you think of as your own, is it more solitary music? Do you think of it that way?
No, not really.
I mean, you research with these pipes.
Well, yes, sometimes it has been that way. But with the nyckelharpa one can experience fellowship and community with other musicians. You can stand on a stage with a group and someone hollers, let's take Bodamattes polska or Brännvinslåten. That's a fun experience. To play together is enjoyable. Just simply two nyckelharpa playing in an song is a joy to be part of. It is fun. It's a lot more fun than playing by yourself.
Yes, I agree.
It's even more fun to playing for dancing. Playing together with another person, two nyckelharpas for dancers, is probably the ultimate experience. The rhythm and to see them dancing to the beat of what you are playing, there is nothing better. And I've gone off on my own with these various instruments, and people I played with have gone off in new directions too, played with others and so forth. And I've been all involved with the stråkharpa as well.
What is a stråkharpa?
Då ska jag visa den då.
Ja.
This instrument is referred to as a stråkharpa. It wasn't called that by the people who use it, however. They called it tagelharpa, from horsehair, tagel. because the strings are made of twined horsehair.
Det är tvinnat sånt här tag.
Tvinnat?
Det är
Som garn?
Like yarn? Maybe I better come closer and see before you start playing.
Nära minst.
There you can see.
Hold it very still now.
It isn't twined particularly tight. You just take it between your fingers and do this.
Okay, but hold it very still so I can take a close-up of the whole thing.
På hela saken.
Now I want to take it from this other angle.
This is how you hold it, and up here is some rosin.
Did you melt regular rosin and put it there?
It wasn't my idea. I didn't think of it. It's traditional.
Wait, I have to get closer so I can see better.
It's pretty smart. Rosin is one of those things you take out, use, and then put on a table somewhere and can never find again. This way is attached right to the instrument and always available.
Can you turn it a little so we can see it from the side? I want to see the instrument from the side. See where the holes are and everything.
Hålen ligger och sådär. Jag har aldrig sett en sån här förut.
For I've never seen an instrument like this before.
I'd never seen one either when I started being interested. There was a book. Otto Andersson was the name of the author, a Finnish-Swedish music researcher who, to a certain degree, inspired Jan Ling to look into and do the research
That resulted in his book.
Nyckelharpan. He was quite prominent in his field. He made notation and wrote down the folk music around him, started a spelmanslag, musical group, in Finland and wrote about music, eventually becoming a professor at Åbo Academy, Finland's Swedish university. He first came in contact with the instrument by chance when, as a young student on scholarship from the Swedish Literature Society in Helsinki, he was sent to the island of the coast of Estonia, Ormsö, Nökkö and Dagö. These islands were home to a Swedish fishing and farming population. He was only 18 or 19 when he first arrived there at Christmas 1903 and was housed at the parsonage. This instrument was still a part of their culture and they called it talharpa. Tal is dialect for tagel.
Det var taglet det här.
Originally they strung it with horsehair, but during the 1800s violin strings became fashionable, as did violin F-hoes. But the spelman that Otto first came in contact with, Hans Renqvist, his talharpa had the older type of sound hose that looked more like a Malteser cross or some early Christian cross. Hans played for Otto, who wrote down 20 or so tunes in Hans' repertoire. He also met another spelman, Urpas Anders, who shared his tunes to Otto.
Också ett antal låtar för honom. Och sen så småningom så...
Then, when he left the island, he got to thinking about how this really was an almost forgotten instrument. There were references to it in different articles and such.
But that was about it.
He became more and more interested, writing and researching and eventually presenting his doctorate
Dissertation.
on it in 1922. For a full 19 years Otto was engaged with study of this instrument, among other things.
Men bland annat hade det varit det, mycket.
The instrument was also known in Finland, in Karelia.
Han letar rätt på alla uppgifter om det och...
Otto tried to come up with a fitting name for the instrument. Harpa is traditional, and to indicate that it was played with a bow, he decided to call it stråkharpa.
Och De där uppteckningarna.
Sometime in the mid-70s I was able to get hold of Otto's music notations, and I published them then along with the record. They were hard to get hold of. I wrote to the library in Åbo repeatedly asking about Otto Andersson's notation. Do you have them? Can you really not find them anywhere? The answer was always no. Then one day a letter came from Åbo. We have found that you seek. You can order copies for a kopeck each or whatever it was, a penny, dirt cheap. So I ordered a set of photostat copies and looked them over. But I couldn't really make any sense of it.
It just looked
Like very rudimentary music with no indication of rhythm or anything. I was no wiser. Sure, you could play or sing the notes one after another, but it didn't amount to anything. Meanwhile, I read Otto's book and learned a great deal. I built my first stråkharpa in 1971, figuring that it couldn't be that hard, and it wasn't, and it worked pretty good too. I built some others, and I probably wouldn't have kept at it if they didn't turn out pretty good. Then, 1974, there was a TV program with Olle Adolfsson, music around the Baltic Sea or something, and he had made contact with an Ormsö-spelman named Johannes Österberg,
who played his instrument, and Ulla interviewed him. Ulla seemed
pretty excited about his guest, saying, "Here we have something really old." After that, I contacted Johannes Österberg myself and invited him over to my place together with a friend of his who was also from Ormsö, Anders Westerberg. They had built their stråkharpas here in Sweden. Like so many others, they had escaped from their island in 1945 during the Second World War. I finally gained some understanding of how this instrument is played and how the music ought to sound. I kept at it, playing with this instrument and building them at the same time that I was playing nyckelharpa. I'd bring my various instruments along down to the dance group and show them. Mostly they just laughed at me. That's how it was. Then eventually, when the group Nordingarna has been at it for a while, I suggested starting a splinter group with a focus to the older long dances. I played this instrument along with Anders Eklund on Jo's harp and an older version of the nyckelharpa.
En äldre nyckelharpa ihop med den här. Så vi höll på med det också några år.
We kept at it several years.
Det var lite kul, man byggde instrumenten.
We built instrument, we experimented with the music and worked out with the dancers how it should sound. Some tunes had words, so we sang and they danced.
Det finns också verser, de sjöng ibland och så här. Där höll vi på med några år.
It sounds as if you were the icebreaker for this instrument.
Isbrytaren för det här.
For this instrument, yes, I was the first person who take it on and make an effort to learn its secrets here in modern day Sweden, besides those who already had it as a part of their culture. But they kept to themselves in their own community festivities, so the general public never had the chance to be exposed to it. Then in 1975 I made a record with the singer Marie Selander. She sang all the Swedish folk songs and ballads, and I accompanied her on the stråkharpa. She thought it was fun, and in that manner the instrument came to the attention of radio people and the media. Word got out amongst the larger circle of people.
Do you know of anyone else who makes use of the instrument now?
Yes, there are several spelmen who play the instrument. Not many, just a few. Per Runberg and Anders Norrudde both use this instrument. I had some contact with Anders, and then garmarna Gott Ringqvist. Bernt Olsson, Toma Hapala, Harald Pettersson is some of them just now.
Blims. Ja.
Are they younger musicians?
Yes, they are younger. It's mostly younger spelmen who show any interest. Every now and then some violin builder contacts me for drawings and makes one. But those who actually want to play the instrument tend to always be the younger spelmen. They like the drone and buzz of the sound. All the spelmen are generally pretty skeptical about instruments like this.
Instrument.
That's all right, they can be skeptical. I thought when I began that it was fascinating to build this instrument. At first I put on violin strings and tried to get the instrument to sound as brilliant as possible. Then one day a fiddler friend of mine, a girl, come over and I showed her one I had strung with horsehair. Play it so I can hear what it sounds like. That's what it should sound like. That's a distinctly personal sound, not like anything else. Otherwise, it sounded like a small fiddle, a wooden shoe fiddle perhaps. You couldn't hear what it was. When it's strung properly with horsehair, it has such a special sound. That tune was a part of the wedding music on Ormsö. It's called
Brude, heter den. Men
I suspect it was an older type of polska.
kan man anta.
It's easy to imagine that the music has evolved over the centuries while the instrument
has remained essentially the same.
Även om jag på scen...
I've come to believe that certain musical characteristics or peculiarities remain typical, perhaps even originating as far back as the Middle Age, while rhythms have changed with the fashion of the day. I'll play a typical tune from there.
Harpliken. Som jag rätt nu tänker hur Jonas harpar, så som jag rätt nu tänker hur Jonas harpar. Hans harpar och Kate dansar, drickskappan lockar disken. Hans harpar och Kate dansar, drickskappan lockar disken.
That was some likejar. They didn't say låtar, tunes, but said likejar from the Swedish word lek, play. They say a like on talharpa. You played a like on the instrument.
It looks as if you press the strings from underneath.
That's probably the most unusual thing about this instrument, for there is no fretboard. I grasp it around this left arm here, and then I release my finger upward like this. Bum, 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 dum, dum, dum. Response to this is you can't do it that way. How strange. But you don't do this with the fingers. You hold the hand like this and softly release the fingers up a little bit. I'm pretty close with my fingers and then release them as required against the strings. I don't stick the fingers out straight like that. Just release them softly. So det blir... That's how you play.
Did you ever come down on the lower strings?
No, not so much. The melody is mostly here.
The bow seems awfully loose.
It's the same with this bow. You hold it like this and then a couple of fingers under. The bow here has full contact with all the strings pretty much all the time.
Was there a living tradition then with these instruments?
Well, the last I guess was this Johannes Österberg. He played.
Han spelade lite speciellt.
He didn't have a particularly even pulse. Rather, it went sort of like this. And then he would insert pauses. He sort of stopped at the end of the phrase. He explained that the houses were quite small, and when there was a wedding, the houses were packed to the rafters with people, and only a very tiny space could be cleared for dancing. Maybe maximum 2 couples at a time. When they had danced for a while, he'd do this musical pause, sing to signal that the next couple could take their turn on the floor. He probably played longer for the dancers than I'm illustrating here, but this gives you an idea. This is how he showed me.
Det förefaller liksom det sista.
They probably done some sort of waltz to this music, even though it most likely was a polska to begin with.
Musik från början.
But it's easy to change the character of the music as long as it's in 3 beats.
Ja, och sen så...
And then they sang also. Different verses.
Tack för tack. Jag ska ta någon nu då. Katt och kack och bröd. Katt och kack och bröd är godast. Öl och brännvin all roland. Ja.
I'm not any big singer.
So there won't be any more song here.
So that's those. Then there were some tunes after that Renqvist which I played first.
Och sen så fanns det en annan spelare.
Another spelman who played both accordion and talharpa was Urbas Anders. I played some of his tunes.
Jag kan spela några låtar efter honom också. Urbas Anders. Där var den sista där, den har...
The last one there. Hur roligt att komma, hur ynkligt att gå. So much fun
To arrive.
so sad to leave. That is, sad to leave the wedding festivities. And then they had parties for 3-4 days already. Playing, dancing, singing. They danced the hat of the bride, for instance.
Do you know of others who have taken an interest in this instrument as a result of your efforts?
Och vilja ta det till sig.
Well, I guess so, since I made some records and such. But I have to say that interest has been very subdued here in Sweden.
Det är inte överhuvudtaget stort intresse för det.
Ja.
On the other hand, there has been quite a bit interest in Finland. Finland has been interested because I play many Finnish tunes from Karelia.
Karelska låtar på instrumentet.
The sound is very surranda.
Yes, it's a drone instrument, a vestige of the sound ideal of the Middle Age. This characteristic can be made even more pronounced if I retune slightly. That was a Finnish tune.
Wow, that was really lively.
It's called rally, which means trall in Finnish.
Alltså, ja. Många finska låtar.
But many Finnish tunes are sort of sad,
Because they're often in a minor key.
so they seem a little dark.
You could call them dark.
That one certainly wasn't dark.
Nej. Ja, de var finska de där.
Those were all Finnish tunes. And they're completely different in character and rhythms from the Swedish Estonian tunes. It's not linguistically correct to say Swedish Estonian. You are supposed to say Estonian Swede or Estonian Swedish.
Oh.
Most say it in the wrong way.
Have you shown me all your instruments now?
Instrument nu.
Yes, the ones I stand behind. But I can show you one more instrument,
A medieval predecessor to the
talharpa.
Här, till det här instrumentet. Det är en som musikforskningen har velat ha till en stråkharpa. Det är ett medeltida instrument. Det är en lyra.
This is a lyre, a bowed lyre, found in a fisherman's cottage outside Gdansk in Poland. This isn't the actual one, of course. This is a replica I've made. Tattered remains of this instrument is the only actual instrument dating from the Middle Ages ever found in Northern Europe, or all of Europe for that matter. No other intact instruments have been found because they have disappeared. Wood disappears. Ancient instruments of a similar sort have been found in Russia, but this one was found in Poland.
Det här Västeuropa, alltså Polen då. Och den här kan ha varit en...
The strings are of sinew. And it can sound like that.
It looks sort of like a sandal.
Ja.
It's a sweet little instrument. It has an amazingly detailed inscription on the back. I burned the designs with one of those soldering irons. It's some sort of infinity knot.
Were these inscriptions on the original one?
Yes, this is what has held my interest this past year. I've been building and exploring older instruments like this, even the ones from Russia, but I don't have any of those here.
I see.
Men det skulle jag vilja få presentera.
But I think I want to present these on a recording I made. Before I present it anywhere else, it's so complex how it all hangs together that I feel there needs to be an informative text as well. It's important, I think, in regard to instruments like this, that you don't just drag them out and play a tune of them, but that you must also provide information and background about the instrument. Tell your audience about the milieu that the instrument came from.
Educate them about the origins.
As much as is known.
Sen kan jag säga så.
Then I can add that I have worked so much and for such a long time with the talharpa that I've gotten somewhat tired of it. That can happen when you spend a great deal of time with something and you feel after a while that you are not getting anywhere with it.
That's not so unusual.
No, and since the instrument is fairly limited, I feel that I've perhaps been trying to get more out of the instrument than it can give. And that creates a sort of conflict, I think. I think that's how it is.
Och då blir det ju så att när man spelar nyckelharpa.
When you play nyckelharpa, folk often ask you to bring it along and play. You experience a sort of...
Well, that it functions in social settings.
People know what it is.
Vet vad det är. Och en sak till som
And I must say, if there are any younger players watching this and thinking about the things I'm saying, I have made the observation that occasionally it worked really well to present this old instrument in certain social settings or situations. Some people think it's interesting and exciting. On the other hand, sometimes you encounter fairly strong resistance. What is that thing you got there? I've never seen that before. What is that weird thing he is playing on? The response becomes a sort of filter, and it doesn't function very well. It's generally better to play on something which people have some sense of already, even if people don't know what the nyckelharpa sounds like, or how it works, or anything you hear. Oh, whoa, he's going to play nyckelharpa. What fun! That's a completely different. It creates another situation with the public, a positive energy, which is much more fun for the musician. You fulfill the expectation of your audience rather than go against the grain of imposing something of them they might not grasp. These are just random thoughts, but that's how it seems to me.
I noticed something similar when we play nyckelharpa at home in the United States. We're not all that great, but we can play some tunes. We've noticed that it doesn't matter terribly much if you play beautifully or just marginally well, because people aren't really listening to what you're playing, because they're totally absorbed in just looking at the instrument.
Yes,
That's how it works. You're satiating curiosity and generating
positive feedback. But if there is no curiosity, no expectation, and you come and say, I want to show you something. Do you know what this is? This is a really old thing. Oh, really? What does it sound like then? It's just not the same situation.
You hardly need to play anything at all. People are happy just to look at the instrument, I've noticed.
I don't play much on the talharpa these days. I've been concentrating on those Russian instruments and built this one, the Polish one. I've been in and out of the recording studio a couple of years now, putting together a presentation of the instrument. It was mixed this past fall.
So it's done now?
Yes, the record is done.
Det är några ganska intressant.
We've included some really interesting recordings made in Russia.
Och det är ganska
There are some really exciting cultural aspects to this.
Trade and exchange connections with early Russia around the year 1000.
Sigtuna and all that.
Sånt där utbyte. Ja. Då får jag försöka
Now I have to try and remember what I haven't played yet. Otherwise I might repeat something.
väldigt framgång.
My goodness. It usually holds its tuning better than this. All right, let's see.
Då tar jag honom.
An old bridal march from Tierp.
Och det var
Jonas Skoglund used to play that. There are notes for it. I'll show you that book with the notes. There are tunes that it's impossible to figure out what they're supposed to sound like. Some really strange old tunes that were played on even older type of nyckelharpa than silverbas.
Och sen brukar vi spela till dans då.
We used to play a polska for the dancer after.
Jan Jansson som var från Tolfta.
I think have a picture of him here in my case.
Den är ju bara som en...
That's just a simple scale up and down.
Liksom rytm. Men har man på med det?
But if you play it a while, it grows on you.
Det är ju en känsla att man spelar ihop sig med låtar, vissa låtar, instrumentet och sådär. Det där var någonting som jag tyckte var kul att spela.
It's a tune from nyckelharpa playing at Skansen, which I've enjoyed playing.
Men
I think I'll take a tune after Jule and end with that. Key of D.
Time to say thank you. Thank you for playing for me and my cameras.
Men tack ska du ha själv, det var trevligt.
Yes, thank you. I've enjoyed playing for you and your cameras. It's been inspirational.
Will you show us your pins?
Right?
Take pictures of them?
I keep one on my vest. You can't really walk around wearing more than one pin at a time. This is the Zorn gold
medal. I got it in 1998.
Can you tell us about these?
This one I got in 1983 in Sörmland. I was teaching a stråkharpa construction course there. Then I heard some members of the Zorn jury interviewed on the radio, and they were asked if it was possible to become a riksspelman on some of these more unusual instruments. They didn't think so. Too primitive. I thought I just might have to try it. So I traveled to Västerås that summer and played for the jury. And they awarded me the silver medal, and I became Sweden's first riksspelman on stråkharpa.
Many years later, in 1997,
I received a letter from the Zorn committee that I was to be awarded the Zorn gold medal that year. I was really taken aback. I thought only very traditional and magnificent spelmen of great stature were ever considered. So I was awfully surprised. It was a great honor.
Men jag blir mycket förvånad. På senare tid så har jag faktiskt börjat sätta på mig det här guldmärket.
So I wear this pin. People notice it and ask about it. It's a nice way to start talking to people.
Men på något sätt så är det lite...
I don't wear all these others.
I understand.
That would look silly, but one is all right.
Och det är ingen fel i det. För att...
Nothing wrong with that. The old spelmen, they wore their pins on their vests.
Det är på sig sina märken. Och det tycker jag man kan ha. Då kan man få ligga i där.
Ja, det går bra.
Så blir det liksom sådär. Så.
Shall we look in the box now?
Now we'll look in the books. This is an old friend of mine, Janne Svanström, clarinet player. We played together a lot in the early 70s, and he was a part of the LP record we made with Joel Jansson. This is At Home with Joel Jansson. This is Sven Nordin. We played Österby tunes together during the 80s. And there is a picture of me, and this is Johan Edlund and Jonas Skoglund, the Skansen spelman. This is Anders Eklund and me, sometime in the early 90s, I think, maybe 1903. And this is Erik Sahlström. I sent them some money. And that's Ceylon Wallin, Anders Eklund and me at stämma. There is Joel Jansson again, and this is a 75 or postage stamp depicting Ceylon from the 70s, and another stamp of Näcken. It was some painting. That was a movie they made several years ago.
Folkmusikens dag och så där.
And that was the LP record I made.
And then I want to see the Skansen book.
Ja.
Nyckelharpa playing at Skansen. Notations by Carl Peter Leffler. He writes a little bit about those guys I told you about. Johan Edlund and Jonas Skoglund, whose tunes I play. And he writes about the instrument, basics, and even how it was tuned, how they tuned the resonance strings. Then there are pages and pages of tunes. For example, I played this one.
After Marsetran.
Here are tunes after Johan Edlund, and then I also played tunes after Jonas Skoglund, which are here too, in two separate sections. A lot of tunes.
I just play a few of them. Here are some picture I forgot to show before when we were talking about stråkharpa. Is it okay if I sit like this?
Det här är en färglitografi.
This is a color lithograph by a German named Rosworm who researched and wrote about the Swedish settlers along Estonia's coastline. And this depicts talharpa or stråkharpa played for dancers on Ormsö. They are dressed in their traditional attire sometime in the mid of 1800s.
Och här är två Ormsö män som kom till Sverige under andra världskriget.
And here are two Orms men who fled the island and came to Sweden during the Second World War. Roughly 8,000 people fled the island and their homes, often in open boats. When the Red Army advanced and invaded the region, people built
boats secretly
in the woods and escaped. These two men built new instruments when they came to their new homeland, and I met them in 1975.
Och jag träffade dem 1975. Här är ett skolarbete.
Here we worked with school children. We went out to school and taught the children dances and songs and let them try and hand and playing stråkharpa. It was the folk singer Marie Selander, Per-Ulf Almo, Mona Tegnér and me around 1976 or so. And here we are the Nyckelvik School, the craft school on Lidingö, Stockholm. We are building instruments. 1976 to 1981 I offered building courses. Per-Ulf Almo and I. Here they have built an instrument and I'm showing how you make the strings. And here is an old man from Ormsö who had also built his own instrument. He played a little bit and Per-Ulf took the picture.
Okay, now we have that.
Ja. Now we'll document it.
We've documented everything thoroughly.